How's it going, everybody, and welcome back. Today, out here in the shop, we're working on my dad's 2003 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. It's a little tiny turbo diesel, and it's a cool little car and it runs good, but right now we have a crank no start issue due to the fuel system losing its prime. So on this thing, a lot of diesels and stuff, if you get any air in the system, it'll just never start. So some diesels use high pressure oil to fire the injectors. Believe that this one is just high pressure fuel. Once the injector pump gets some air in it, it just won't start. So you have to do a couple of little tiny tricks to kind of bleed the system, reprime the pump, and that's what I'm going to show you today. All right, so this is what it looks like with the engine cover off. I'm going to go over a couple little things. First, I've already done the job, and it's pretty easy. I don't really need to take a bunch of stuff off to explain it to you guys. You'll understand exactly how it works without having me disassemble the stuff again. It's not hard. But one thing, since we're already under here, I'll show you to check out if you've got a car like this, is your dipstick tube. Now, these things are notorious for breaking because there's really nothing that supports them. So you can see at the bottom, this one was broken. It gets hot down there. They get brittle and they crack. The only thing that holds this dipstick tube in place is the engine cover. It's got a hole with like a grommet in it that holds this thing in place. And once you put it in there, it kind of pushes down on it a little bit and holds it in. So without that thing in there, it doesn't snap in or lock in or have a bracket or anything like that. It's just free to pop out and suck in road grime and grit and sand and dust and everything right into your crankcase. So definitely check that if you're already in here, because these are like 13, 15 bucks, something like that on the internet. They're definitely cheap. My dad's was just open. It was totally busted off at the bottom. So who knows how long it's been like that. You can maybe put a little bit of RTV on the bottom right there, just in that little recessed area. You don't want to put a ton in there, because then you could potentially suck it into your oil pan and onto your oil screen and filter and all. You don't want that. So just a little bit probably would help out just to hold it in place, because as you can see, it's pretty floppy. So check yours. Again, they're dirt cheap. You might as well check it while you're here, because the engine cover kind of doesn't do a great job of holding that in place. But anyway, back to what we're here for. Right here is the fuel filter / water separator. I think it kind of works as both on this car. On the bottom of this thing, there is a little hand knob, like a little finger knob thing that you can turn. It's like a big plastic wheel, and that has the drain on it, so you can drain this out. So if there is water in your fuel, it'll float to the bottom, or I guess the fuel will actually float on top of the water. It's a better way to describe it. And you can just drain the water out. There's a Phillips head right there. You just loosen that thing up. It'll allow the bracket or the lock to spread apart, and then you can just push it open and pull the whole thing out. Standard tension clamps on here, like most things, and then this is what they call the Mickey Mouse clamp. This part right here, there's not a lot to it. It's just basically a T. It has a little extension that goes straight down, and it's got 2 O-rings on it. So once you get your clamps off, if you feel like you need to drain your fuel, drain the water out here, the water separator, whatever, it's like super, super easy to do. Disconnect your lines here, pull off your Mickey Mouse clamp. You can see how it comes out. And then gently with a screwdriver underneath each one of these, push up or pry up, and this thing will pop out, and you'll see 2 O-rings right there. You can probably just buy the entire unit if you don't need to buy the O-rings, but the O-rings look like they're maybe nitrile and something else. Who knows what else they used, but that's it. If you see any dampness around this area, maybe your O-rings are bad, or you've got a crack in your lines right here, so definitely check into that. Otherwise, you probably don't even need to take this out. This right here is the injection pump, and usually this is the part that you want to try to feed with fuel. This is what you want to fill up. There's a couple of ways to do it. One of them is just to take this line off right here through this compression clamp right here. Just pull that thing right off, hold it up in the air. And I've got this little bottle here with diesel in it, and I just start filling it up, squirting it in until it won't take any more. Now it'll just kind of run in, and it'll slowly drain down. Then you fill it back up, and it'll slowly drain down until you're good to go. On here, these are 17 millimeter nuts. So on this banjo right here, this is like a cap. You just crack this thing loose, crack this thing loose. That will help air get pushed out as you fill the system with diesel. So it'll just run in there, and sooner or later you'll see it dribble out the end. Once it starts dribbling out of this banjo here, tighten all of this stuff down. Don't go hog wild on it because you'll break it. There are some little like brass washers, little compression washers here. So you don't want to go crazy on it and ruin them. So just tighten them up snug. Then continue to fill this thing until you can't fill it anymore. Push it back on, put your clamps on, and then you're good to go. Another way that you can pull fuel into this injection pump is just using one of these regular old, vacuum hand pump deals right there. Just connect up all the stuff that you need to connect up, just like your bleeding brakes. Stick the hose inside of here, take this stuff off, stick it in there, and just start hand pumping away, and it should pull all the fuel through the system, and then you're good to go. Once you see fuel running out, connect your stuff back up, and then you're good. I like filling it with the bottle. It's a little bit cleaner. It's not quite such a hassle with using that pump, but whatever. That's another way to do it, using the little hand vacuum. This is the part that made me want to make the video for you guys, because it was a kind of a nightmare to do this. You got to have two people to do this, or a little trigger, to start to turn the vehicle over while you're under the hood. I'll show you that in a minute. Those 4 holes right there are for the battery box. Once the battery is in, you can't get to those bolts. This is the battery box right here, and underneath it has like a nutsert, essentially is what it is, that goes in here, and that stub right there is what's left of the bolt that holds the bracket down, that holds the battery in place. So it goes like that. Once this thing rusts up, it's almost impossible to get it out. So what I did is I took a die grinder and just started grinding away at it. It's super tight in there because the battery is right here against the side. There's a lot of wiring around there. There's a shroud around this area here that you have to take these screws off. They're just Phillips head screws that hold this little cover in place. Bunch of different little pieces. You have to take that stuff off in order to get enough access in here to do the job that you need. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. So that's a nightmare. You got to get it off any way that you can get it off. But once you get that hold down out, you can get the battery out. And you kind of need the battery because right down here is the starter. So if you've got another person that can help you, that would be a great idea. But I don't have another person. It's just me out here. So in order to turn the car over and prime it and bleed all of the lines, you really need a second person, or the little starter switch, which I'll show you in a minute. So let's say that you're just one guy out here like me. You don't have a helper to sit in there and turn over the car while you're monkeying around over here. So you're just one guy. You got to do it yourself. That's the approach I'm going to teach you. So once you kind of get in here and see, this line right here is your trigger from your ignition down here to your starter, which engages your solenoid. That is the positive side. The ground is on the bottom. And this little spring clip right here, this is another Volkswagen connector or whatever, and that is what engages your starter. So over here, we've got the little, I'm a lone wolf starter trigger switch. You can get these at the auto parts store. They're like 20 bucks or something like that. And this is what you need. Essentially, it's just got 2 alligator clips, one on each end. The battery, when it's installed, comes to right about here, so you can't get to any of this stuff once the battery is in place. You can maybe get to it underneath the vehicle if you don't mind jacking it up and monkeying around underneath there. So what you're going to need to do it this way is just a length of wire with a female spade on one end, and it doesn't matter what's on the other end. So this female spade will clip right into the spade terminal that's on the end of the Volkswagen weather pack style connector, whatever this is. So anyway, we got this thing here. We can run it off to the side. So when we put the battery inside of here, this is like a junction box. Volkswagen does some kind of strange things, but that sits on top of the battery. Here's your connectors and all of that stuff. And now we've got a little external lead to trigger our starter solenoid. So we'll just sit that out of the way. Next, you're going to want to put in your ginormous diesel battery in there. I don't have the battery tray in right now. It's just easier for what we're going to do. So these are 10mm nuts. Tighten them down. It opens and closes this thing right here, the battery terminal. That's on. Then here is your positive. Go ahead and tighten that up. There you go. You're good enough for now. Now, as far as the trigger switch goes, it's got two ends. I'm going to connect one to your positive battery terminal right there. Got the other one right here going to your little solenoid for your starter. Clip this thing on. And there you go. Now you should be able to turn the engine over without being in the car. Okay, so now we've got this out of the way. You do need to have this thing spinning around to generate enough pressure to bleed the air out of the lines. So these are your injector lines right here, your fuel lines for your injectors. If you crack them open a little tiny bit, they shouldn't be super hard. Don't go crazy on them and ultra crank them down or cut yourself. We might as well just move this thing out of the way so we're not cutting ourselves more. There we go. Now at least we won't snag ourselves anymore on it. Okay, so these things are just cracked loose. There you go. Not super crazy, not super loose. Just a little bit loose. The key is off in the car right now. So as we turn this over, we'll see some diesel fuel start spitting out of here. Now, if you've got a lot of air in your system, you still have to have the injection pump pulling straight diesel out of here, compressing it, driving it through these lines to this point. So it might take you a little bit of cranking. Don't crank for a super long time while you're using this thing. For one, it'll kill your battery. Second, it'll wipe out your starter. So just do it in small increments, and you'll see it start gurgling out of all of these injector lines. So you see the diesel spraying out of there. We know this one's good. Snug it down. That one's spitting out good. We'll snug this one down. That one's a little bit low, but I think it'll catch. Spitting up pretty good. Snug this one down. Once you get the engine running, it will cycle some air through, but if it's got a ton of air in the system, it won't even start. All right, so now that we can see that we've got pressurized diesel coming up through almost all of the lines, this one looked a little bit low, but if there is a little bit of air in there, once the engine is running, it should start cycling that through after a little bit. So we've got good pressure up to these lines. We should be able to just turn the key on inside the car, use our little switch here to allow the engine to start up. We should hear if everything is good. All right, so let's give it a shot. Sounds pretty good. Now that everything is running, just check to make sure that you don't have any leaks. Looking pretty good. All right, a little bit of brake clean, and then some air. We'll kind of clean up some of the diesel and dry it all up so we can see that we don't have anything leaking out from any of our lines. Everything looks good. All of our hose connections are good. Nothing's leaking here. Nothing's leaking at the injection pump. Nothing's leaking over here. All nice and dry around here. Seems to be pretty good. And that's it. Kind of just a quick and dirty explanation of what I did. Like I said, I already did the work before, but I thought maybe one of you guys might run into a similar issue like this if you're out at a junkyard or looking at a car for a project or something like that. So decided to kind of make a little video on it. If you do see one of these cars and you don't have any history on it, like I already knew that this thing ran and it was just a fuel prime issue. But if let's say that you're going out there, you don't know the history on a vehicle or whatever, a diesel will usually try to kick over if you just spray some ether into the intake. So if you hit the key with some ether and it tries to fire, you know that your issue is maybe fuel related. So start looking at the injection pump or air in the lines, something like that. If it doesn't kick over on ether, maybe there's some other issues there that you need to investigate. So hopefully that'll point somebody in the right direction. But other than that, now that it actually runs and stuff, I can start trying to track down what the actual problem is, where it's leaking from. I got to do the brakes on it, do a couple of other little odds and ends, put it all back together. But hopefully this helps somebody out at some point to figure out, what's going on with their little ALH Jetta. I don't know anything about diesels, to be honest with you, or not very much. So if you guys have any pointers or information that I should know about, leave some comments below because I would like to learn about them, and I don't really have an opportunity to work on diesels too much. Don't really know that much about them, but that's it. So hopefully it helped out. I hope you guys have a great day. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.